How many times have you had a child who was tantruming, was reactive, was just emotional, just really hard to deal with? We've all experienced it as parents. I mean, you may be blessed to have that angelic child that does not no emotional reactions, and you're very lucky because those kids exist. But the majority of us have experienced a scenario where you're like, what is going on with my kid, right? Why is my kid so reactive? Why is my kid so tantrumy? Why does everything upset them? And the story I want to share with you is about my daughter, Lana, the most magical little human being in my life. And my son is awesome too, but she is just my little girl, and daddy's little girls are very special to them. But Lana actually has taught me a lot. And, I call her one of my greatest teachers because I've learned a lot as a medical professional by being with my daughter and learning from her. And why I'm sharing this story is Lana, as I've shared with you before, for those of you that have watched my prior videos, is a highly sensitive person. So am I. And highly sensitive individuals have very sensitive physiologies. So when we say highly sensitive person, it's not just a person who is sensitive mentally. And this is one of the mistakes that we make, that highly sensitive individuals are just sensitive mentally, psychologically, and that is actually an error. Highly sensitive individuals are physiologically very sensitive. Their bodies are sensitive. Their bodies are fragile and far more reactive than, say, for instance, my son, who will probably become a high school football quarterback. And he's strong and he's resilient. And you can see that his body is going to be one of those bodies where he can live in a toxic soup and it will not faze him at all because his physiology is that robust. And there are a lot of people who have that kind of strong physiology, and he doesn't get fazed by sound. He doesn't get fazed by, environmental stimuli. He loves it, actually. Whereas my daughter, when things go wrong, and things really become hard for her. And it breaks my heart to see her struggle like this. And as she struggles, we as a family struggle. So what is it about highly sensitive individuals that causes them to be this way? Well, it turns out that at multiple levels, at the gastrointestinal tract level, at the immunological level, at their ability to detoxify, their mitochondria, at multiple physiological levels, these individuals, Lana being one example, are far more vulnerable. And this is the population of children I work with. So this isn't speculation. I mean, this is what I do in my office every day. I actually help children exactly like her who happen to be suffering at a far greater degree get well. And what's really amazing about this is the Lanas of the world who are healthy, when they're healthy, they are these imaginative, creative, really magical human beings that come up with things that are just incredible to see. And they're loving and they're compassionate and they're just kind and they're just, it's truly a beautiful thing to witness. When the same individual becomes unhealthy, so when that highly sensitive individual becomes unhealthy, it becomes a borderline nightmare to see. Because now they're reacting and they're tantruming. And it could be a 10-year-old. I've had patients who are 10-year-olds. I'm like, that's a tantrum, right? And they're like, yeah, my 10-year-old is having tantrums that last 45 minutes. They become easily upset. They start having big emotions where everything just causes them to, completely lose their head. They become highly anxious, where they become overwhelmed in the environments that they're in and they can't function, they can't socialize. And this is the part that is really sad to see. And the coolest part is we can actually change this. We can do something about this. We can make it better. But it starts with a degree of awareness. So how is this relevant to my Lana? Well, it turns out that with Lana, when we keep her diet clean, which means very little sugar, we limit gluten and dairy, and we don't completely X gluten and dairy out because, limiting it for children who are overall doing well, the psychological, social factors are actually too significant, and that becomes a problem. Whereas at home, we're mostly gluten-free. She has a little dairy, a little slice of cheese here and there when she wants it, but it's not a large part of her diet. And the reason for this is these foods, gluten, dairy, and sugar, happen to be rather inflammatory, and sugar itself and high carbohydrate foods cause blood sugar fluctuations. And highly sensitive individuals do not, and if there's nothing you take away from this video, it is this: highly sensitive individuals do not do well with low blood sugar. So ingrain that into your brain, and remember, highly sensitive individuals do not do well with low blood sugar. They crash. I go completely berserk. My daughter goes berserk. Most of the kids that I take care of, if they're crashing their blood sugar, go berserk. So one example is your kid is at school. They're fine in the morning. They're kind of overwhelmed at school, so they don't really eat much. Maybe they have a little piece of toast or a little piece of fruit. Whatever it is basically a carbohydrate or sugar. And by the end of the day, that child is completely flipping out and reacting. Why are they reacting? It's because their blood sugar is low. And when their blood sugar is low, you might as well just throw that child into a tailspin and see how they do. Regular meals, protein meals, lots of fiber to stabilize the blood sugar, balance fat with the protein and everything else is the key to keeping their blood sugar happy, which then keeps them happy. Along with that, keeping inflammation low. Highly sensitive individuals do not do well with inflammation. It turns out that there is a physiological condition. You can look this up. It's called sickness syndrome. Sickness syndrome. Sickness syndrome is basically a syndrome. It's a condition where inflammation is affecting the brain. And when inflammation is infecting the brain, you get a really weird clustering of presentations. One, the individual becomes highly anxious, and I've witnessed this myself, so now I can speak of this from my own person. I become anxious, I become reactive, I don't feel well, I get brain fog, and the world becomes more overwhelming to me. I become more sensitive to the world. I become more reactive to the world. I have a harder time being in the world. And I can tell you that, I eat really well, and then I, give in and have way too many slices of pizza. And within 36 to 48 hours, and the same thing happens to my daughter, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, life has become so much more hard. And wow, that pizza really came at a cost. So keeping inflammation down actually is very vital to having a highly sensitive individual be able to shine. Making sure the highly sensitive individual is not exposed to large amounts of toxins, whether they be glyphosates in various pesticides or insecticides, whether they be gobs of plastics and other chemicals that could be coming in through the food products, or if your kid is taking a water bottle to school, and we're talking just the regular Arrowhead small water bottles, all of those things over time have an impact. The most significant toxin that I have seen to affect highly sensitive individuals are actually mold toxins. And you've heard me talk about this before, and you look at me, you're like, dude, you've kind of gone over the edge. It's because mold toxins in highly sensitive individuals are probably the worst combination disaster you can imagine. So making sure this individual is living a clean life, that you're mitigating the toxin exposure when possible. Obviously, we can't keep everything perfect or clean, and that is not the goal. And you'll see future posts of me talking about what things you can do to optimize detoxification to buffer and counteract the effects. The other thing is keeping the mitochondria happy. The highly sensitive individuals genetically, and this is something I've seen across the board, highly sensitive individuals genetically have less optimal mitochondrial functioning. Their mitochondria are fragile. Their mitochondria are less robust than other individuals. And one of the ways we see this happen is that highly sensitive individuals tend to tire more quickly. Their energy production is less robust than other individuals. So if you look at highly sensitive individuals and you put them side by side, and you've got my little guy Lev, who is running 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. This guy does not stop. And then there's my daughter, who actually prefers to sit. She prefers to play quietly. She doesn't like exerting herself as much. It comes at a cost. She has to really push herself. And I'm the same way. I have to really push myself to keep going. And the more I do it, obviously, the better my energy becomes, which is why I try to exercise often. But the mitochondria of highly sensitive individuals are generally less robust. And by keeping inflammation down, by keeping the diet healthy, by really minimizing toxin exposure, that's one way to optimize mitochondrial functioning. The other way is to actually supplement. So what I do for myself, what I do for my patients, and what I do for my daughter is we actually take some supplements to really rev up the mitochondria. It's like putting 91 octane fuel in your car. By taking the supplements, and I've shared some before, Spectrum Needs is one of the products that I happen to like. I have no affiliation with them. The compound called PQQ that you saw a prior post on is actually something that I've become so impressed by because it is a mitochondrial rescue, as some people call it. It becomes a mitochondrial antioxidant. It supports mitochondrial functioning and keeps the mitochondria running at a robust level. And you don't need to give your kids, if they're healthy, you don't need to do this every day. Like, I'm not pushing supplements on my daughter every day, but twice a week. It's like, hey, sweetheart, let's do some lemonade together. And we do it together. And we share the lemonade. And, she's not terribly happy with it, but she does it. And by doing all of these things, what we do is we create a scenario where this magical human being's physiology is running efficiently. It's running well. And what happens when that is in place, and obviously there's parenting involved and there's psychological pieces, so I'm not dismissing that piece. We're aware of how we communicate with her. We're aware of how we are with her. But when her physiology is running smoothly, when she is well slept, when she is well fed, there's this magical human being that shows up that really amazes my wife and I. And both of us are like, my God, who is this little girl and how are we so lucky to have her as a part of our life? And that is what I want for all of you. I want all of you to see your children thrive and be in a place where you look, you're like, who is this human being? And how am I so lucky to have this human being be a part of my life? And if you're in a place where you're like, what is going on with my child? Why are they so reactive? Why is parenting so difficult? Take a step back and think through these pieces. Are they sleeping well? Are they eating well? Is there a toxin that they're exposed to? Is their mitochondria running well? Are their gastrointestinal tracts running well? Is their immune system healthy? And when you bring all of these things together, all of a sudden, your ability to parent and your ability to be with your child becomes so much easier. And their ability to be with you and to be in the world becomes easier. So let's work together to make this a possibility for every parent whose child is struggling and can't function easily and well. And let's take these conversations out into the world and really change our perspective in terms of how we care for these children and adults, because these same conversations are relevant for all of you highly sensitive adults. So thank you for watching. This is Dr. K, and I look forward to chatting with you all soon. You be well. Bye-bye.